Every morning when I wake up, I got a new step. It's because of him I can face what's next. No matter what I'm going through, he's the answer. That's the reason why I sing his praise like an anthem. And did I mention that he can't lose? I lost count of how many times he came through. Strong God, ain't no mountain that he can't move. And every day I just need a fresh encounter with you.
I feel renewed, refreshed. I can conquer every day, no stress. I can win with you. And all I need is a fresh encounter with you.
The key verse of this entire series comes from Ephesians chapter 5. It's not on your message notes, but I just want you to remember this. Ephesians 5 and verse 15 and 16 and 17. This is really the theme verse for this entire series, because in it, the Apostle Paul is talking to the church at Ephesus, but he's talking to us. He says, be careful how you live, meaning you ought not just live life by default. You ought to live it by design. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. Look at someone near you and tell them, God has a plan. But ask them, do you? Yeah, this is what the Apostle Paul is saying to us. God has a plan in store for us. But in order for us to do what he's called us to do and to be the people he's called us to be, we can't live thoughtlessly. We can't live aimlessly. We've got to be intentional. And today, we're going to go further into this series by dealing with getting to your why. Because in order to be intentional, in order to live intentionally, a really big critical part of that is getting to your why. And I want you to see this in Matthew 16. I don't want to pick up at around verse 15, and we're going to read a few verses, and then I want to drop down to verse 22. Because in Matthew 16, Jesus has been doing ministry for a little bit of time, and he pulls the disciples together, and he says, what's the talk around town? What are people saying about me in the barbershops and the beauty salons? What are they saying? Who do they say that I am? And some of the disciples say, well, some people believe that you are John the Baptist reincarnate, or another coming of Elijah. And then he says, okay, so I got the word from the people, but you all have been with me. We've been doing life together. So who do you all say that I am? This is when he says, but what about you? Who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus replied, because Peter was the only one who really figured it out correctly. And he said, well, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock, on your profession, in other words. Peter's name literally means Petros in the Greek. It means rock. He says, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. So Jesus says, bravo, Peter, you got it. And so upon you, I'm going to build the church. And right after this is when Jesus begins to tell the disciples, now that you know who I am, let me tell you what I'm going to have to endure. And then drop down to verse 22. Because when he says this, right after he tells them that he's going to have to go to the cross, that he's going to have to endure the shame of the cross and the brutality of it, Peter spoke up. He says, Peter took him aside, this is verse 22, and began to rebuke him. Never, Lord, he said, this shall never happen to you. And Jesus turned and said to Peter, the same Peter that he just gave commendation to, get behind me, Satan. Doesn't even call him Peter. Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Now, I want you to see this. Peter goes from being a building block to a stumbling block. Initially, Jesus says, upon you, Peter, I'm going to build my church. That you're going to be a building block for the New Testament church. In one breath, Jesus says, Peter, you're going to be a building block. But then in another breath, he turns right around and says, no, I'm sorry, you're actually a stumbling block. I want you to see this, because the things in our lives that were meant to be building blocks, if you're not careful, can easily become stumbling blocks particularly when you don't know your why. See, the issue here is that Peter doesn't understand why. The reason that Peter tries to rebuke Jesus and says, no, Lord, we won't want you to go to the cross. We'll never allow you to do that. The reason he goes from being a building block to a stumbling block is simply because he doesn't understand why. He doesn't know why Jesus has to go to the cross. It's foreign. It's something that he's really not trying to embrace. That's the issue here. Peter just doesn't understand why. And when you don't get to your why, the things that were meant to be building blocks can easily become stumbling blocks. But if you're going to live intentionally, if you're really going to be intentional, then one of the most important things is that you got to get to your why. And when I say your why, what I mean is I'm talking about purpose. Your why is your purpose. And purpose, or your why, that's the lifeblood for intentional living. That's the wind behind you when you begin to live intentionally. That's what intentional living is all about. It starts with your purpose. See, if you know your why, then you can make sense of everything on your journey, because you begin to see everything through the lens of your why. But when you don't know your why, when you don't know your purpose, there are things that will come up in your life. There are things that will happen, and they will become unnecessarily difficult for you to handle, because you will see them as random. You will see them as isolated, instead of recognizing that God works all things for the good of them who love him and are called according to his purpose. When you don't know your why, you won't see your experiences through that lens. But when you do know your why, then you can find your way. Yeah, when you know your why, then your way becomes easy. But when you don't know your why, then your way becomes much more difficult. There was a woman that my wife and I had been praying for and ministering to for many, many years. And tremendous woman. She graduated from tremendous law school, one of the top law schools in the country. And she had an opportunity to clerk for a famous judge. And so she finished law school and got this prized position clerking for a high-powered judge. And then after clerking for the high-powered judge, she moved to a major city and had an opportunity to work for one of the largest law firms in the country. They had offices all over the world. And, she made, a lot of money and had an opportunity to travel the world and had experience after experience after experience that on the outside, many people would look at and think that, wow, like you got it made. But she was miserable. And as my wife and I would pray for her and minister to her, she would tell us about how miserable she was and how, yes, she was making a lot of money and had a lot of opportunities, but she was just miserable, not happy, because being an attorney was not her why. And now she's no longer at the firm. She's no longer living in the big city. She's in a smaller city. She's got married. She's got a wonderful family, and she's doing something totally different. But she's happy because she found her why. See, when you know your why, then you can easily find your way. But when you don't know your why, then your way becomes unnecessarily difficult. This is what Jesus is showing us in Hebrews chapter 12. And even in verse 2, it says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. That word scorning means discarding its shame. That because Jesus understood his why, his way was easy. He was fine going to the cross. The shame didn't bother him because he knew his why. Let me explain it to you another way. I don't like packing. I don't like packing, particularly when I have to travel. I don't like packing. Please don't judge me. You may enjoy packing. I don't like packing. As a matter of fact, often I will wait till the last minute and I'll pack. If I have an afternoon flight, I won't pack the night before. I get up in the morning, throw some stuff in the bag. I always forget stuff too, you know. And often I ask my wife, I say, well, sweetie, do the rundown. That's what we call it, because she starts saying, did you pack deodorant? Did you pack this? Did you pack this? And invariably, I'm going to forget something. I'm like, oh, thank you. Because I just don't like packing unless we're going on vacation. Yeah, because see, when it's time for vacation, when I know that I'm going to be able to go somewhere and put my feet in the sand or kick back with a good, just, book for a few days or a week or something like that, then I start packing about a month or two out. My wife comes in the room, she's like, do you need me to do the rundown? I'm like, no, I already got it. I got it. I got that. Why? Because I started packing 2 and 3 months out because I understand the why. Meaning that when you understand your purpose, then you're more intentional and you move forward with greater focus. This is why every single week we encourage you. Doesn't matter if you're new to the worship center, if you've been around for a very long time, we always encourage you to get into growth track, because one of the most significant things that happens in growth track, every class is good, but 301 is probably one of the most pertinent in terms of this subject, because in 301 we walk you through a process that will lead you to discovering your purpose. See, often we have great careers, but our careers sometimes are not congruent with our purpose. Yeah, but in 301, we walk you through that. We walk you through the process of you getting to your why and understanding your purpose, because you will never experience real fulfillment in life until you're doing the thing that God called you to do. And no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter the color of your skin, no matter your socioeconomic status, your purpose is rooted in God. Your why starts with God, not with the expectations of other people. Your why is always rooted in God. This is Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse 5. This is what God is showing us. He says to Jeremiah, he says, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as a prophet to the nations. God is saying, so it doesn't really matter if your father put the moves on your mom or your mom put the moves on your dad. Doesn't really matter how it happened. It doesn't really matter if it was on the honeymoon. Doesn't really matter if it was at a drive-in movie in the back seat. Doesn't really matter. You'll catch that next week. Doesn't really matter. God is saying, before you were an apple in anybody's eye, before you were in your mother's womb, I already knew you. I'd already set your purpose in motion. Before you were even born, I'd already established your why. I say it all the time. There may be a such thing as accidental parents, but there's never anything called accidental births or accidental children, because God established your purpose. And so here's what you have to know. Your why always starts with God. Note this: God gives purpose. This is why getting to your why is so important, because when you know your why, or when you know your purpose, purpose gives meaning. Purpose gives meaning, but then meaning is what produces hope and significance. And so when I talk to people and they're just on autopilot, it's because you don't know your why, because God gives your why. And if you think that your why comes from who you are and all that, no, your why comes from God. God gives purpose, purpose gives meaning, meaning then produces hope and significance. So you got to get to your why if you're going to live intentionally, because several things will begin to happen when you get to your why. Number one, when you know your why, then it's more about others and it's less about you. When you know your why, yes, when you know your why, it's more about others. Your life, you live it in such a way that it's more about others and it's less about you. In Matthew 20, in verse 28, there are a couple of places I want you to see this, and Jesus demonstrates this. He says, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus says, I didn't come to have you waiting on me. I didn't come to have you serving me. I came to serve. But the insight into the reason why he can do this and did it with all confidence, look at John 13, because in John 13, this is the famous story when on the night that he was betrayed, after the Lord's Supper, he washes the disciples' feet. But let me tell you what fueled him to be able to serve. Verse 3 says, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God, so he got up. Did you catch that? He knew his why. He understood purpose. So he was able to get up from the meal, take off his outer clothing, and wrap a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. See, your why is an inside job. You got to know your why, and you can't get that from external stuff. As a matter of fact, when you don't know your why, that's what many people spend so much time doing. When you don't know your why, you try to find it in stuff that is outside of you. You know, material possessions and titles and associations and affiliations. But your why is an inside job. And so Jesus says, I have no problem serving. I have no problem getting down on my knees and washing your feet because I know my why. I know who I am. I know my purpose. One of my long-term mentors, he is one of the apostolic elders of this church, Bishop Kenneth Omer, who pastors in Los Angeles, California. He tells this story. He told this story to me years ago, and I never forgot it. He told me about the time that he went to minister at a church. And it was a very small church, probably about 30 members. They had 30 people, very small church. And he went to minister, very small church, about 30 people. And when he got there, he noticed that the pastor had an entourage, you know, people like armor bearers and all that kind of stuff, of like 50, 60 people. But it was a small church. It was a small church, about 30 people. I mean, maybe 30 people, small church, really small church. But he got there and he noticed that the pastor had like this entourage or all these people around him, like 50, 60 people around the pastor. But it was a small church. It was a small church, about 30 people, and the pastor had this large entourage around him, like 50, 60 people. Did I tell you it was a small church? It was a small church, about 30 people. And so when he got there, and the pastor and this large entourage, they were walking the Bishop Omer to the office, and the pastor was walking with him, but then his entourage was out front. And as they were walking down the hall, the entourage was saying, "Make way, you know." And there was this older woman who was coming up to the pastor. She had her arms out, and this big old guy who was in the entourage, he kept saying, "Make way, make way," and he just hit the woman and just pushed her over to the side. And she was, and then so you know, pushed her over to the side. And after the entourage passed by, she said, "Baby, Mama didn't mean no harm. Mama just wanted to hug the pastor." What's the point? See, when you need to be addressed and heard and seen, when you need that kind of procession to announce that you're coming down the hall, it's because you don't know your why. Yeah, see, when you need somebody to announce yourself, or when you need them to read the litany of all of your accomplishments, it's because you don't know your why. See, when you don't know your why, you will spend so much time focused on yourself. But when you know your why, amen, you don't have to spend all of your energy on yourself. Like Jesus, you can focus on others and serve. The most powerful people, the most influential people that I know, they are the most unassuming. They shun attention. I'm talking about people that are making a difference in a significant way. And if some of them walked in this room, you wouldn't even know it. They don't have on any bling. They're not driving in or wearing it. They may have on t-shirts, a t-shirt and jeans and flip-flops. But their whole life has been focused on others. See, here's what I want you to understand. The sooner you can get to your why, the sooner you can shift your focus to other people. So if they don't recognize you when you walk into a room, if they don't go down the litany of people who know you and who you know, that's fine. If they don't recognize all the brand names that you're wearing, that's okay. Because when you know your why, it's not about you. You live to make a difference in the life of somebody else. Teach Pastor Van. So when you know your why, it's more about others and it's less about you. But then number two, when you know your why, it produces a confidence that's attractive to others. Amen. When you know your why, it produces a confidence that's attractive to others. I love this. Look at Mark chapter 1 and verse 38. I want to read a few of these because I want you to see, once again, Jesus, knowing his why, Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is" what? "Why I have come." So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. And a man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." And Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." Immediately, leprosy left him and he was cleansed. And Jesus went away at once with a strong warning. Jesus rather sent him away at once with a strong warning. "See that you don't tell this to anyone." Let me pause here and tell you, this is another example of being intentional. Because when you know your why, you don't have to carry your business cards around. You don't have to carry your demo around. You don't have to say, "You know I'm a singer, don't you? You know I can sing. You know, did you hear me leading the song on the stage? That was me, by the way. That high note, that was me." You don't have to do all of that when you know your why. When you know your why, you don't have to advertise. Jesus says, "Hey, I know you just got healed, but don't even tell anybody about it. But go show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them." Instead, the man went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. And as a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in a lonely place. Yet people still came to him from everywhere. He's not in the major city. He doesn't have a billboard, you know, Jesus healer. He doesn't have any of that. He's in a small, inconsequential place. Yet people came from everywhere to see him. Why? Because when you know your why, man, it builds a confidence, and that confidence is attractive to everyone. When you know your why and you live your why, it will produce this confidence, and it literally will attract people. Have you ever noticed people who walk into a room, and when they walk into a room, it's like they command the room? Have you ever noticed, it's like when certain people walk into a room, the attention shifts, the energy shifts. And I'm not talking about ego. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about people who come in a room and just have to be seen. I'm just talking about people who walk in silently, but when they come in, everybody knows that they're there. Yeah, that's happening because they're rooted in their purpose. They understand their why. Because when you know it, it produces a confidence, and it's attractive to other people. The other day, I've been writing, close to finishing the follow-up to the People Factor, and I was writing, and I was just doing a lot of writing, and I just kind of was sick of looking at my computer screen. So I just turned on the television, came out of my office and just kind of sat on the couch, and I just wanted to watch something to just veg out. I just wanted to turn my mind off. And I was just flipping the channels. And I stumbled upon this old movie on this old movie channel. I know you all have probably never heard of this movie. Probably don't know who the star of the movie was, but it's an old movie. It was called Purple Rain, and it was a guy by the name of Prince. I know you guys don't know who that is. Probably never ever seen the movie, but I was just flipping, and I kind of caught it halfway through, and it was like a scene when he was on the stage, and he was singing, I don't know, he's singing like When Doves Cry or something like that, and he looked strange. He had his shirt off, taco meat was kind of out, had on tight pants and heels, looked strange, but there was such a confidence, as he was playing his guitar and singing, and I just was flipping the channel, and I saw the confidence, and it just pulled me in. I said, well, wait a minute. Let me sit the remote down for a second. And I ended up watching the rest of the movie because I just became transfixed. He looked strange, the tight pants. I know he had to be uncomfortable, but he was so confident, just so confident playing the music and playing the guitar, singing the music. And it just pulled me in. Now, I haven't heard that kind of music in like over 30 years. I mean, seriously, over 30 years, I hadn't listened to it. But I was so pulled in that even after the movie went off, I just pulled out my phone, looked around, downloaded it on iTunes. I was walking around the house talking, purple rain, purple rain. I mean, how did I get so pulled in? Because as strange as he looked, he was up there, but he was confident. Because when you know your why, it produces a confidence. And you know what? It's attractive. It'll pull people in. Because that's the same confidence that will keep you when you're going through a storm. Have you ever seen some people that the storms can be blowing? I mean, the winds can be just raging, and they're just fine. Because when you know your why, you could be asleep like Jesus at the bottom of the boat, and while the rest of the disciples are panicking, he just stands up and says, peace, be still. Because when you know your why, you know that God hadn't brought me this far to leave me. And I know what he's shown me. And I know where I'm headed. And so I'm not moved by the storm. And come what may, you can say what you will. Like a tree planted by the rivers of water. I'm rooted. I'm firm. I'm focused. That's what happens when you're intentional. But here's another thing. When you know your why, the more you live it, the greater the impact you will have on others. That's a big one. The more you live your why, the greater the impact you're going to have not only in your own life, but also in the lives of other people. Look at Acts chapter 2 and verse 22, because this is Peter, and I want you to see this. This is Peter on the day of Pentecost. The Holy Spirit fills the disciples, and they begin to speak in other tongues. And 5,000 people are saved on that day. And the church really is born on that day. And the onlookers are saying, no, something's wrong with them. They may be drunk. And Peter says, no, we're not drunk. It's 9 a.m. But then he's preaching, and this is a part of his message. He says, fellow Israelites, listen to this. Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God to you by miracles, wonders, and signs, which God did among you through him, as you yourselves know. This man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge, and you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to a cross. But God raised him from the dead, freeing him from the agony of death, because it was impossible for death to keep his hold on him. A major message. But here's what's interesting. This is the same Peter that denied Jesus vehemently. I mean, it wasn't a nice denial. It was no, I'm sorry, you have the wrong person. He was like, didn't I tell you? I don't know him. How in the world does Peter go from that to being so embarrassed that he doesn't even want to be affiliated with Jesus? How does he go from that to standing up boldly, preaching, and telling people that you guys were part of the reason that he died? He goes from being afraid to literally indicting the people that put Jesus on the cross. How does he go? How does he go from there to here? Well, part of the reason that he makes this transition is because he spent 3.5 years watching Jesus operate in his purpose. But greater than that, he sees that even when Jesus is betrayed, denied, spat on, beaten, and hung on a cross, Jesus is so in his purpose that even while he's on the cross, he says, Father, forgive them.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Fresh Encounter. For more from Van Moody, visit vanmoody.org, where you can access free resources, subscribe to the Freedom Podcast, as well as find great gift ideas for yourself or a friend. Also, be sure to connect with us on all social media platforms. We look forward to seeing you next time on Fresh Encounter.